Today we're talking about the big O, and yes, I am talking about Ozempic. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome to Queen Things, the show where we talk about the things that matter to us queens, because if it matters to us, it matters. I'm KJ Miller. I am a founder, a lecturer, and a content creator. And for reasons I can't quite explain, today I've decided we are going to talk about weight loss, and more specifically, weight loss drugs. I am on one. I have been on one for quite some time. I recently read a very interesting article over on Substack that I want to get into. So we're going to talk about it. It's not the normal fodder for this show, but the normal fodder for this show is expanding. I mean, part of the reason I added to the intro, the show where we talk about things that matter to us queens, is because I want to make it very clear it's going to get broad. It's going to get broad because we care about a lot of things. So we're going to talk about that. And then, yes, I'm going to talk about Ciara Miller again, because not only did she come out with the world's most beautiful Glamour cover, but we also were subjected to Wes Wilson and Amanda Batula going this away and that away, and then Wes hopping on his podcast saying absolutely nothing. So yes, I'm going to talk about that as well. Let's get into it. Before we do, quick announcement. If you haven't joined the Patreon, I would recommend it. Last month, we did a deep dive on Beyonce and Taylor's early careers. We've done music reviews. There are bonus episodes for months and months now that go back and back and back. Lots of great content over there. What are we talking about this month? I don't know yet, but I'll know by the time I drop the bonus episode. It'll be fun. You'll probably learn something. So I recommend it. And that's my only announcement. So let's get right into it. I do want to start with the Ciara Miller of it all. First of all, if you haven't seen the Glamour cover shoot, all of the photos within the article, we'll put a couple screenshots up just so you can get a glimpse if you're watching on the YouTubes. And we'll also link to the article so you can read it. I will just say, and I spoke about this over on social, what a goddess. What a goddess, what an angel, what an ethereal queen. She looks so beautiful, but even more importantly, I love that her first foray into speaking to the public in the midst of all this is via a magazine cover at that. We were all thinking too small. I made a TikTok saying like, oh, what podcast is she going to go on? She said, podcast? Hello? Podcast? No, she didn't do a podcast. She did a magazine cover. Thank you. And very well deserved. She came across as just very emotionally intelligent, emotionally mature. You know, she wasn't cussing people out. It was clear there's anger there. There should be anger. Your best friend lied to you for months and went behind your back to date your ex. Of course, you should be angry. Also, we learned West attended her 30th birthday party in December. Did not realize I am basically a full decade older than her. That's neither here nor there. West attended her birthday party in December, and they agreed they were not going to sleep with other people in Bravo. They agreed that part of sort of the boundaries that they would set and respect would be not hooking up with other people on Bravo. 2 months later, we have now learned because of West, he was in a serious relationship with Amanda. That's what this man said on his podcast. Before I get to that nonsense, though, let me just continue on with Ciara, the queen. So, of course, there's anger there. However, what really comes across to me is the fact that she's not trying to lead with anger. She really is centering herself, centering her growth, centering her career, the things that she wants to do in her life. And yes, she does want to address these two buffoons and will do so at the reunion and will speak her piece. But I got the sense she wanted to address it because it needs to be addressed. If someone is playing in your face and disrespecting you, you address it and then you move on. And so I'm glad that she's just coming into all of this with the right frame of mind. Kudos to you. Kudos, for your cover. Shout out to you. Now let me address West. Ugh. The one upside for me, of Wes getting on his podcast and saying absolutely nothing worth hearing is it helped me redirect some of the anger that I had mostly been reserving for Amanda Batula to him. And so I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for that because while Amanda still, in my opinion, deserves most of the smoke because she was Ciara's actual friend and betrayed their actual friendship, I would say where I was like a 90-10, maybe a 80-20 in terms of my anger for Amanda and Wes. Now I'm at a good 60-40, and that feels right. That feels right. He deserves way more smoke than I was giving him, and I'm glad he has helped me realize that by his bitch assness displayed on his podcast. I'm not even going to tell you what the podcast is called. First of all, I don't know. Second of all, I refuse to look it up. But I got served a clip on TikTok, and we'll post the clip to the TikTok, not to the podcast. Sending this man listens, please. Where it's very clear he just does not understand at all why people are upset. And you know who doubled down on that and confirmed that is Jesse Solomon, because Jesse Solomon, after that, went on Watch What Happens Live and confirmed, like, he thinks people are, getting the timeline wrong. And that's why people are upset. And he really wants to clarify the timeline. Sir, what you said on the podcast was things got serious in February of this year. Mind you, February is the shortest month of the year. It's only 28 days in February. All right. And it was in January that Amanda announced her divorce from her husband. Also in February, Amanda and Ciara both going on Watch What Happens Live. And together talking about Amanda saying, I wouldn't date someone in Bravo. Yeah, that's a quote from February. This February, the February that you claim the two of you got serious. And just so we're all clear, if you say February is when it got serious, that implies to literally everybody that it started before February. Okay, because if it started and got serious in the same 28-day span, what sense does that make? What sense does that make? It makes no sense. Either the relationship began in February or it got serious in February. Nobody's buying that all of it happened in those 28 days, sir. And we definitely aren't buying that it happened in under 28 days, which is what it would have to have been if when Amanda went on Watch What Happens Live in February, she was telling the truth when she said she had no plans on dating anyone in Bravo. In order for that to have been true, that would mean y'all hadn't even started yet. But somehow by the end of February, 23 days later, it was serious. No, stop playing. Please stop playing. Stop lying. And by the way, who gives a fuck about the timeline? Who cares? We're talking about betrayal. We're not talking about timelines. No one's pulling out their calendar. We're talking about betrayal. We're talking about lies. We're talking about deception. That's what we're talking about. You're talking about timelines. We're talking about morality. And do you see how there's a disconnect there? So I'm not looking forward to hearing what West has to say at the reunion. I'm looking forward to hearing what Ciara has to say. I'm looking forward to hearing what the rest of the cast has to say. Lindsay Hubbard, yeah, I want to hear what she has to say. KJ, I want to hear what he has to say. Carl, I want to hear what he has to say. Kyle, too. Kyle, a little bit less so, because it feels like he's just going to spend the whole time defending Amanda. But Kyle, too. But West, if it's going to be more of this, sir, wrap it up. Wrap it up. Need that button. Where is that from? Is that from the Chappelle Show? Wrap it up, okay? We don't need it. Oh, and very quickly, before I get into our main topic, since I brought up Ciara, I do want to say there is a podcast that I listen to, and in fact, am a paid subscriber for, called Diabolical. I've mentioned it before on this show. They did an episode about this. It was actually a bonus episode, and it was about Ciara Miller, Amanda Batula. I think they spoke about other things as well. And I was so turned off by their take that I am genuinely considering canceling my subscription. And it feels worth just saying that out loud since I have recommended them here before. The broader thing, though, it would never just be, it's not just that one podcast. Something I have found about these two women, Katie and Ciara, who are the hosts, they're both white women. They're both progressives. And they're both very intelligent, which is why I have enjoyed that show so much. And they have made me think about a lot of different things very deeply, differently than I would have, which is why I've recommended the show. But one thing that I have consistently felt is a blind spot for them is race, and particularly Black women. When they have had to speak about Black women, and the ones that immediately come to mind for me are Kamala Harris and now Ciara Miller, I have found their ability to do so with any real critical thought or empathy or just even basic understanding of like racial politics in America to be extremely lacking. And the thing is, we all have blind spots, which is why I've continued to subscribe. I have blind spots. I've spoken about that as it relates to the LGBT community. I consider myself to be an ally, but obviously as someone who's not in the community, there are going to be things that I say that are going to hit differently because I'm not a part of that community, and it's something I'm aware of, but it doesn't change the fact that can be a blind spot for me, right? And so race and the race as it relates to Black women being a blind spot for two white women, both of whom actually grew up conservative. That's not surprising. And if I just wrote off every white woman who didn't understand what it's like to be a Black woman, I would have no white women friends. And I have quite a few. So that's why I've stuck around. But when it came to that episode, Ciara, one of the things she said was she was sort of introducing the topic of Amanda and Wes. And then she goes, oh, and also Ciara's Black, and said like, and that matters. But then didn't really say anything else about it. And I was like, that's the whole conversation. It was very off-putting. And then also the conclusion that they drew, like, oh, the relationship wasn't that serious. Just some of the shit we're seeing on the internet that just very clearly doesn't understand all of the dynamics that are at play here really rubbed me the wrong way, because it just felt like you're going out of your way not to understand. So many people have now spoken about this at length, very eloquently. There's so many ways you could educate yourself on this without even having to work at it. You don't have to go read, like 1,000-page tome on it. You could click on one podcast, hello, mine included. And to not do that, but then to still like sit up and give your opinion as if it's like informed. I don't know. It really rubbed me the wrong way. I have not canceled my subscription. I'm giving it time. But I did want to say that just because it's a podcast I've recommended, like, I don't know. I got my good eye. I got my good eye on those two, but we'll see. We'll see. And now on to Ozempic. All right. So first of all, let's talk about the Substack article that brought this on. The article is titled, "My Roommate's on Ozempic and It's Causing Chaos in the Apartment." Subtitle, "The Skinny Epidemic Hits My Friend Group." All right. And the writer is The Single Sister. That's the name of the blog. And I'm going to pull out some key parts of the article. But first, let me just give you an overview. Basically, this woman lives in New York City with 3 other roommates in the West Village. And one of the roommates has been on Ozempic now for over a year and has gotten very skinny. According to the writer, she's gotten unhealthily skinny. She's become model thin. I don't know what size models are these days. 0. Let's assume maybe she's like a 0, maybe a 00. I don't know. I don't really know models like that. That's not true. I know a number of models because we work with a lot of models for Minted. I just did a photo shoot recently, but we work with models of all sizes. I would say of the 8 models that we had at our most recent shoot, I would describe maybe one of them as quote unquote model thin, like what I think of as model thin. Maybe she was like a size 0. Everybody else was somewhere between like a 4 and like a 16. Frankly. And that's always been true with Minted shoots. So it's not that I don't know models like that. It's that I don't know that many models who fit the quote unquote typical model type. But she's calling her unhealthily thin, and she's saying she's model thin. So let's assume she's like a double zero. Let's assume that. Okay. And basically, what she says in the article is, well, she says a few things. One, she's been on the medication for too long. And when she got on the medication, she wasn't even of a weight that would warrant her being on the medication. She doesn't say what her weight was previously. She doesn't say what the weight is now. We're just, I guess, supposed to assume whatever the weight was previously was a healthy weight. She also says that one of the girls in the apartment has struggled with disordered eating. So it is triggering for her to see this person losing this much weight and taking this medication in order to do so. She also says, all of the other roommates have spoken about this girl at length and about the weight that she's lost, like at length. They've had conversations about it. They've had like group chats about it. And they feel as though it is affecting her mood and how she interacts with people, how she interacts with the person she's dating. You know, they're having all sorts of conversations about this girl, all kind of centered around her GLP-1. So I'll jump in at the moment where she is telling us how she found out that the girl was on Ozempic. Basically, she's out to dinner with one of her roommates. They're discussing the Ozempic roommate and how insecure she is with her boyfriend. And the roommate says, well, I mean, you know, she's been on Ozempic for like the last year. I think it's messing with her self-confidence. Then the writer says, I was speechless. S had been taking, she calls her S, the roommate who takes Ozempic. S had been taking it for over 6 months before I moved in, so I hadn't witnessed the dramatic weight loss my other roommates did. My roommate told me how the weight loss had transformed her, from the way she now dressed to the newfound attention from guys, and I was flooded with understanding. I think most women have experienced this. There's a great section in both Tina Fey's memoir, Bossy Pants, and Dolly Alderton's Everything I Know About Love, about their disparate experiences in the world being a little over and underweight. I personally have charted the inverse relationship between my weight and the attention I get from men. It's nice to get checked out or hit on, and it's perversely satisfying to fit into last summer's jean shorts, but it's not so nice to think about food all day long or feel your heart race when you go from sitting to standing, or be too winded to get through a workout class, or too anxious about overeating to go out to dinner with friends. Come to think of it, the list of cons far outweighs, so to speak, the pros. Then she starts describing S. She says, for context, S is what I would describe as a normal size. Before she started taking Ozempic, she looked like a regular, healthy 27-year-old. I'm not even sure how she got the prescription or how she's been on it as long as she has. S is hilarious, impossible to embarrass, and largely an open book. She's shared sex position tips and intimate details of fights with her sister and her fears about her professional future, but she's never shared that she's on Ozempic. It doesn't feel very good that we all know and have discussed it anyway, but I understand why she wanted to keep it private. And then she writes this whole article. About it. Okay, girl. She continues to describe how the other roommates feel about it. As I said, there's a roommate who has struggled with disordered eating. So she talks about, how that has affected them. This is the paragraph that kind of struck me. S is the victim of a bigger societal issue, but in the delicate ecosystem of my apartment, she's become a bit of a villain. The insidious trickle of competition has widened into a broader stream as she's lost more and more weight, and that's influenced how she dresses and dates. Her weight loss has inspired a complicated mix of jealousy, self-righteousness, and sympathy. There's a sentiment that she's cheating the system by taking a weight loss drug, and beneath that is a seed of envy. Why do we want her to be bigger? Part of it is genuine concern for her well-being, but I think a piece of it is also a feeling that it's not fair she gets to be so thin by taking a drug that, out of a sense of principle, the rest of us wouldn't take. Okay, there's so much going on in this article, and it is so interesting to read this article as someone who is on a weight loss drug and has been for over a year as well. Is it over a year? Yes, because I have just thought about weight loss, obviously, more now that I have lost a fairly significant amount of weight. And I have lost more than I originally set out to lose. I have not been losing weight for the last, call it 5 months. My weight has plateaued, and I have just been maintaining it basically since November, which is what I wanted. And I'm on a lower dose now of the medication. I'm like, this is good. Believe me when I say there are plenty of people who would, at my size, still feel like, oh, I should keep going. I know some of those people. I'm not one of those people, but I have lost more weight than I originally set out to lose. And so while I still don't, I don't know. Maybe there are people who would look at me and say, now I'm at an unhealthy weight. Actually, I do know. You know what? There are people who would, and who would not only think it, but who would say it to my face. Do you know who those people are? My relatives, my aunts and uncles. I saw some of my relatives recently, and I haven't seen them in many years. These are aunts and uncles I haven't seen in many years. And they remarked immediately out loud, you know, the way Black aunties and uncles do. Oh my God, you're wasting away. You need to eat, you know, things like this. And we also had a little bit of a mini family reunion last summer. Last summer, I was probably about 15 to 20 pounds heavier than I am right now. And I heard the same thing. Oh my God, you need to eat. This was not the same set of aunts and uncles. This is on the other side of the family, different set of aunts and uncles. Mind you, what is important to note about those aunts and uncles and them saying that to me? You need to eat. You're wasting away. You're too thin. Have you been eating food? You look like a child. That's what one of them said to me on this recent trip. You look like a child, like a little girl. These are the same people when I was heavier who felt very comfortable remarking on how heavy I was. The weight I gained in college, I heard about it immediately from them in the same way. Okay, so that really kind of blew my mind, because I'm like, when I was 20 and put on, you know, pounds at Harvard, y'all were the ones telling me, oh, I see they're feeding you at Harvard. And now that I'm a little bit smaller, like I'm getting the, oh my God. So that's my own personal issue. Okay. That's not really what they're talking about here, but I just was reminded of that as we discuss it. But generally, other than my aunts and uncles who will just say whatever comes to their mind as soon as they see me and see whatever weight I am, I don't think most people would see me and just think to themselves, I'm at an unhealthy weight. I'm not going to say what my weight is. I don't believe in sharing that on the internet, but that is just not something that I think most people would think. And I don't know where I am relative to this girl. But one thing I will say is what people think of as obviously a healthy weight and obviously an unhealthy weight is just not obvious. And that is something actually Diabolical Lies helped put into perspective for me. They did a whole episode on this. What we think as, you know, there's so many people who during the Wicked marketing campaign, so many people referring to Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo's weight as just like obviously underweight and obviously unhealthy. But here's my question. Given how skinny the average actress in Hollywood is, how do you know what is obviously unhealthy and why is it definitely them? You know, like I have thought for years when I look at actors and actresses particularly on different TV shows, like, wow, they are so skinny, particularly when I meet them in person. Meeting some of these actors in person, you're like, however skinny you think they are on camera, when you see them in person, it really will blow your mind. I've met quite a few. It really will blow your mind. But to me, the question is, how do you know what's obviously unhealthy? Do you know what I'm saying? Like I now have to take a cholesterol medication. Never had to take it when I was heavier, but I do now. So there are plenty of people who would look at my heavier body and call that obviously unhealthy. I was very much overweight according to the BMI, but blood levels, you know, my blood looked good, blood work, sugar levels, all those things, cholesterol levels, blood pressure, all those things were perfectly normal. So was I obviously unhealthy? No. And so I think one of the things that we all need to recognize is that, as it turns out, you really cannot tell how healthy or unhealthy someone is simply by looking at them. You may think you can. You may think that that's a skill you have. It's not. It's not. So that's one thing. Just this idea that these roommates are all talking about her being obviously underweight and obviously unhealthy. It just isn't nearly as obvious as you think it is. The weight loss might be dramatic, but there are plenty of healthy people walking around as a size 00. That is a thing you can do. You can be that small and be healthy. And by the way, what we define as healthy, or what we have defined as healthy for so long, and underweight or overweight or obese, is based on a BMI system that has been proven demonstrably mostly useless. Like, if you just actually read the updated literature on the BMI scale and how useful it is for determining health, it is functionally useless. So even the definitions that we have for these things have been proven to be not helpful. So that was sort of my number one thought reading this article. Like, y'all seem very, very comfortable drawing these grand conclusions about your roommate on the basis of just looking at her. And you seem very comfortable doing it, but ill-equipped to do it. The same way all of us are ill-equipped to draw those grand conclusions about people's health simply by looking at them. But then the other thing that I was struck by was this piece where she says, part of it is genuine concern for her well-being, but I think a piece of it is also a feeling that it's not fair she gets to be so thin by taking a drug that, out of a sense of principle, the rest of us wouldn't take. Okay, but what principle? And is it a principled stance to say this advancement in modern medication is something I'm just not going to take? I'm just not going to have anything to do with. Now, maybe the reason they feel like it's a principled stake is because of the weight they all are. Maybe they all feel like they're already at a healthy weight, so it wouldn't make sense to use this drug to lose weight. Even if they want to be smaller, they feel like I can't justify it because I'm not actually at an unhealthy weight. Maybe that's what she means by principled take. But to me, and I've never really understood people who feel like there's something wrong with weight loss medications. Like, that's doing it the wrong way. If someone wants to lose weight, like, that's their goal. The goal is lose weight. And the options in front of them are do it this very hard way that has never worked for me in the past, like where I've succeeded at losing a little bit of weight, but then always gain it back. I've done it over and over and over again for decades. That's option A. Option B is doing it in a way that will be easier and more effective, right? Those are the two options in front of me. Do it the hard, ineffective way, or the easier, effective way. Why wouldn't you choose this way over here, right? We can separately have a conversation about whether anyone ever should want to lose weight. We could have that conversation. But if the conversation we're having is how you lose weight, it doesn't make sense to me logically that you would fault someone for choosing option B, for choosing the option that is easier and more effective, right? And I'm not suggesting everyone who wants to lose weight should do it that way. I'm simply saying I don't understand faulting someone for making that choice if the goal is to lose weight, which is what she seems to be saying here. It's not fair that she gets to do it this easier way. But why wouldn't you choose to do a hard thing in an easier way? Like, I feel like we've put so much morality around it, but if we take the morality out and just think about it rationally, why would anyone choose to do something a harder way if they didn't have to? Why? And I'm not saying I can't imagine any reason why someone would do it a harder way. What I'm saying is I can't imagine why we'd be upset that someone didn't choose the harder way. That feels, I don't know, it just feels kind of like super judgmental and a little bit toxic to say this person who I'm saying is my friend, or at the very least a roommate who I care about, I care enough about to write, 2,000 words of concern on my Substack. This person I care about has made this choice that they feel is right for them, done something difficult, found a way to do it that makes it less difficult on them. And my primary concern is you didn't do it the right way. You did it in an immoral way. That feels odd to me. I kind of like feel like I can't square that with your so-called concern. And then there's this paragraph here. She writes, getting a nose job is not wrong, nor is going on Ozempic. S is an adult and her body is, after all, her choice. As it turns out, though, whittling your body down to model size doesn't eradicate the core insecurity. If anything, it amplifies it. Of the feelings her weight loss has invoked, the greatest is sympathy. I wish she felt like she could talk to us about it, because every woman walking this earth has wished for a different body, and that's a shame, but something we should never feel alone with. I wish she knew that the people who love her just as she was on that mountain, a few pounds heavier and a lot happier, unburdened by an all-consuming self-absorption and self-criticism. Okay, so what I took away from that paragraph, and it seems like a lot of the commenters agree with me, is there just seems to be so much projection happening here. You have essentially said this woman is insecure. She is burdened by an all-consuming self-absorption and self-criticism, and that she is a lot less happy in this smaller body. But what is leading you to draw all of those conclusions? And what is leading you to assume the cause of all of that, if in fact it is true, is the weight loss, right? Maybe she is unhappier. Maybe she is more self-critical. But how have you figured out that all of that is tied to the weight loss? It feels like a very simple causation versus correlation. You don't exist in her body, but you have decided, because what you have seen is her losing weight, that is the cause, I guess, of all of these problems that you also feel fine ascribing to her. This is something about weight that I think just like generally plagues us. We feel very comfortable drawing conclusions about people based on their size. We feel very comfortable saying if someone is in a very large body, drawing the conclusion that they're lazy, that they don't work out, that they are unhappy, that they don't have any willpower. We feel very comfortable ascribing all of that to people in larger bodies. And we feel very comfortable ascribing to people in bodies that maybe we deem fit that they do have willpower and that they work hard and that they put in the effort and that they take care of themselves. And we ascribe to people who I guess we believe are underweight that they are harming themselves and that they are overly critical of themselves and that they are unhappy, when you really cannot draw any of these conclusions about anybody based simply on looking at them. And that is one of the things that I think, as someone who is now in a smaller body than I used to be in, but who spent most of my life in a larger body, not a mid-size, I guess is what a lot of people would call what I was for many years. Just this idea that people feel so confident and comfortable ascribing so much to you based on what they see, based on the size that they see you in, has just become I guess, more stark to me now that I've lived in many different sizes, because I had to go through all of the sizes between where I started and where I am now. And like every other woman, my weight has fluctuated wildly through the years. Okay. So I feel like I truly have lived at every size in between the one I am now and the largest that I got, which was where I was summer of 2024 when I started the medication. And that is uncomfortable for me. That idea that people just feel so at ease with looking at someone, looking at their size and saying, I now know XYZ about you. I know how happy you are or aren't. I know how hard you work or don't work. I know how much willpower you do or do not have. It just is very bizarre to me and feels like so much of that is happening in this article. And as more people take these weight loss medications, and there is still plenty that we don't know. This is not me in any way attempting to tell anyone they should. hop up and go take a weight loss medication. Nope, not at all. But we do know the numbers of people taking these medications continue to climb. The medication continues to be more accessible, has started to become a bit more affordable. It is not what I would call affordable. It is just more affordable than it used to be. As that continues to happen, I think this is a conversation we're going to have to continue having. And this article today is sort of what kicked off for me wanting to have it on this platform, because I am curious what you guys think. Statistically, some number of you are also on this medication. I don't actually know what it is, 5%, 3%. I don't know. But some of y'all are on it. Many of you, I'm sure, have seen other people get on it. What are you thinking about it? I'm curious to know. And folks, that's our episode for today. I know it was a little different, but like I said, I think these are the things the queens are discussing, and I want to hear what you think about it. Always feel free to drop in the comments and let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time. Oh, Ozempic.